I didn't come to the Smokies because I loved the outdoors. I need to be honest about that. My wife took the apartment, my boss took my dignity, and the only listing on the federal jobs board I qualified for was Park Ranger, Seasonal Great Smoky Mountains NP. 3 months in the woods, alone. That sounded about right for a man who'd spent 6 years pushing tourism pamphlets about places he'd never actually been. That was October 2023. My first autumn out there. They paired me with Hank Beaumont for 2 weeks. 22 years on the AT corridor, retiring end of season. Quiet in the way that means he's already said everything once and doesn't plan to repeat it. He walked me through the backcountry patrols, the shelter checks, the weather signs on the ridge. On my last day with him, he handed me a folded piece of yellow legal paper. His handwriting, all caps. Trail notes, things they don't put in the manual. Most of it was practical. Where the creek crossings flood first, which shelter had the broken bear locker, what radio frequency to use when the main repeater went down. Then item number 7, MM 14.7, do not stop, do not touch the oak, count nothing. I figured it was hazing, the old ranger messing with the new guy. I put the note in my desk drawer and forgot about it. My first solo patrol was a Thursday, 40 degrees at the trailhead. The fog in the Smokies doesn't roll in. It's just there when you wake up, like it was waiting. Wet leaves everywhere, that thick smell of things rotting the way they're supposed to. Pine and mud and something sweeter underneath. The decay that happens when a whole mountain drops its leaves at once. I had my radio, my compass, my watch, my logbook. I'm a note taker. Always have been. 6 years of office work does that. You write everything down because somebody's going to ask for a number. The trail from Tricorner Knob runs along the ridgeline. Trees on both sides, path barely wide enough for two. That morning I had it to myself. No through hikers this late in the season. I reached mile marker 14.7 around 11. I knew something was wrong before I saw the marker post. The radio went first. The low hiss of the open channel just stopped. Not static, not a dead zone crackle. Nothing. Like someone pulled the plug, then the compass needle spun, slow, deliberate circles. My watch screen went blank, not dead battery blank, just empty glass. And the rest of it hit me all at once. No birds, no wind in the canopy, no creek sound from downslope. The fog had thickened, but fog doesn't stop insects. Fog doesn't erase everything. That's when I saw the tree, a red oak, massive, trunk wider than I could reach around with both arms. It sat 15 feet off the trail on the uphill side, roots breaking through the soil like knuckles. The kind of tree that makes you feel how old it is just standing near it. But that's not what stopped me. The handprints, dozens of them, pressed into the bark like someone had pushed their palms into wet clay. Except this was wood, living wood. The prints were sunk a quarter-inch into the surface, fingers splayed, and the bark had grown around them. Some were barely visible, just faint outlines smoothed over by years of new growth. Others were clearer, sharper. I stepped closer. I could see the ridges, not just the shape of hands, actual fingerprints. Preserved in wood like fossils in stone. I counted them. Couldn't help it. That's what I do. 6 years of spreadsheets trained it into me like muscle memory. 47. I wrote it in my logbook. Date, time, location, number. I stood there trying to make sense of it. Some kind of trail tradition, I figured. Hikers pressing their hands into a rotting section of bark and the tree healing over. Trees grow around things. I'd seen fence posts swallowed by trunks. I stepped back onto the trail. The radio hissed to life. My watch blinked back. 11:14 a.m. The compass settled north. Somewhere below me a crow called, and then the whole forest filled back in. Wind, water, insects. Like someone turned the volume knob back up. I finished the patrol, filed the report, didn't mention the tree. That night I sat at the station and told myself it was nothing. weird magnetic pocket in the rocks, folk art carving on a landmark tree. The silence was, I don't know, a weather thing. I almost believed it. 1 week later, I was back on the same section. Same route, same direction, same time of day. The only difference was the weather. Colder, upper 30s, a thin frost on the trail that crunched under my boots and made every step loud. I told myself I wasn't going to stop at 14.7. I told myself that the whole walk up from the trailhead. I stopped. It's hard to explain why. You know how sometimes you're driving and you take the wrong exit, not because you forgot, but because your hands just did it? It was like that. My feet left the trail and I was standing in front of the oak before I made a conscious decision to do it. Same thing happened. Radio died. Compass spun. Watch went blank. The silence dropped over me like a hood. No birds, no wind, just the fog and the tree and the sound of my own breathing, which suddenly seemed way too loud. I counted, 48. I checked my logbook, last week 47. I'd written it right there on the page, my own handwriting, blue ink, no ambiguity. One more. The new print was at eye level on the right side of the trunk. I could tell it was new because there was no bark growth around it. The wood underneath was still pale, almost white like fresh-cut pine. A left hand, fingers spread wide, pressed deep enough that I could see the base of each finger where it met the palm. I stood there and stared at it for, I don't know how long. The fog moved around me, but I couldn't feel any wind pushing it. When I got back to the station that evening, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I logged into the NPS database and pulled the missing persons reports for the AT corridor in the Smokies. Last 5 years, 3 people unaccounted for. A thru hiker from Michigan who left Tri-Corner Knob Shelter in 2021 and never checked in at the next one. A day hiker from Knoxville who parked at the Newfound Gap lot in 2022 and whose car was still there a week later. A trail runner from Asheville, 2019, found her pack hanging from a tree near the creek, but no sign of her. 3 people in 5 years on a busy section of trail. That's not unusual, statistically. People go off trail, get hurt, don't get found. It happens. I told myself that. But 47 prints, and now 48, and 3 missing people who were never found. The numbers sat in my head the way numbers do when you've spent your career making them add up. 2 weeks later, 3rd patrol. Late October, leaves mostly gone, the trees standing bare like bones. The trail felt exposed without foliage. You could see further, but that meant things could see you too. 14-7. Silence. Dead electronics, the oak. 49. Counted twice, left to right, then right to left. My logbook had 47, then 48. 1 per visit. This time I looked closer at the oldest prints, the ones deep in the bark, and I saw something that made my stomach drop. The ridges, whorls and loops and arches of actual fingerprints, not pressed in, not carved, grown into the wood like the tree had absorbed them, like skin and bark had fused at the cellular level. I photographed the newest print. Good light, steady hand. When I checked the image, just gray bark, blurred, I took 5 more shots. Same thing. The camera worked fine on everything else, just not the prints. I laughed. Standing alone in a silent forest in front of a tree full of handprints, I actually laughed. Because what else do you do when reality stops cooperating with your notes? I tried to tell Hank, caught him at the station the next morning before his shift. Told him about the count, about the new prints, about the camera. His face went pale. Not scared exactly. More like tired. The kind of tired you get when something you buried a long time ago gets dug back up. I told you not to count, he said. Hank, there are 49. I know how many there are. He put his coffee down. Looked at me the way you look at someone who just walked into traffic. I'm switching the schedule. You're not on the 14.7 section anymore. Hank, leave it alone. He transferred my patrols that day, gave me the lowland loop near Cades Cove. Easy trails, families, safe. But I'd already ordered a plaster cast kit from Supply, the kind we use for animal tracks. If the camera wouldn't capture the prints, I'd make a physical mold. Something I could hold and show someone and say, look, tell me I'm not crazy. The kit arrived Tuesday. I told Hank I was doing a voluntary extra patrol on the AT section. He didn't try to stop me, just said, when you go, don't touch the tree. I told him I wouldn't. The last Thursday in October. First real frost. The trail was stiff and white, every blade of grass holding still. My breath made clouds that hung behind me as I walked. I carried the plaster kit in my pack, mixing bowl, water, casting powder. The weight felt practical. This was evidence collection, something I knew how to do. Mile marker 14.7. The silence dropped like a curtain, radio dead, compass spinning, watch blank. The fog was thicker than I'd ever seen it. I could barely make out the tree from the trail. I stepped off the path, walked to the oak, set my pack down, counted 50. One more, right on schedule. My logbook, 47, 48, 49, 50. 4 visits, 4 new prints. One each time, like a tally, like the tree was keeping score. I started unpacking the plaster kit, hands steady. I was going to cast the freshest print, the one that appeared today, and I was going to bring it back and put it on Hank's desk and make him look at it. Then I noticed where the new print was. Every other print I documented was on the front of the trunk. The trail-facing side, the side you see when you walk up. But number 50 was on the back. The far side, the side facing uphill, away from the trail, where I'd never had a reason to look. I walked around the tree. The print was at my exact height. I'm 5'11". The center of the palm sat right at my eye line. It was a right hand. I looked at my own right hand. I'm right-handed. I open doors with my right, shake hands with my right, brace myself against walls with my right. And in the center of my right palm, there's a scar, crescent-shaped. I got it 3 years ago opening a shipping box at the tourism office. The box cutter slipped, caught me right across the middle of the hand, 7 stitches. It healed into a pale, curved line that I see every time I wash my hands. The print in the tree had the same scar, not similar, the same position, same curve, same depth where the scar tissue was thicker. I could see the ridge pattern of my own fingerprints, my actual fingerprints, preserved in the wood of a tree I had never touched. I stepped back, boot caught a root, sat down hard in the frost. The plaster kit spilled, white powder puffing into the fog. I got to my feet, looked at the print again from 5 feet away, still there, still mine, and the edges had bark growing over them, a thin lip of new growth curling inward, like the print had been there for weeks. Like the tree had already started absorbing it, but I was only here now. How could it already be healing over? My watch came back. I grabbed my wrist and stared at the screen, 2:47 p.m. I'd arrived at 14.7 at 11:20. That was over 3 hours. I'd been standing here for what felt like 15-20 minutes. 3 hours were just gone. The radio crackled, Hank's voice thin and tired. You counted, didn't you? It wasn't a question. You always count. That's the kind of person you are. I didn't answer. I grabbed my pack, left the plaster on the ground, and ran. Not jogged, ran. Down the trail with branches catching my jacket, ran until my lungs burned and I could hear traffic from the access road. I made it to the truck, sat in the cab with the engine running and the heater on full, and my hands shaking so bad I couldn't grip the steering wheel. I put in for transfer that night. Personal reasons. That covers everything. I didn't go back to the trail. Finished my last 2 weeks doing paperwork and driving the Cades Cove loop, where there were always other cars, other people, other sounds. On my last day, I was cleaning out the desk, Hank's old desk. I pulled the drawers out to wipe them down, and behind the bottom drawer, stuck between wood and metal, I found another piece of yellow legal paper. Same handwriting. Hank's all-caps print. It was the backside of the trail notes page, the side I'd never flipped over. Item number 7 had a continuation I'd missed, stuck flat against the drawer bottom all season. It read, I counted 2, summer of 1987. Number 23 is mine. I put the note back, closed the drawer, drove home. That tree is still there. Mile marker 14.7 on the AT near Tri-Corner Knob. I checked the satellite view last month. You can see the canopy gap where it stands, all that space the other trees give it, like they know better than to grow